The sun was just beginning to dip low behind the city skyline, painting the streets of Brookdale in a soft, golden glow. It was one of those warm, restless evenings where anything felt possible, good or bad. On the crowded bus heading down Jefferson Avenue, a young black teenager named Malik sat quietly by the window, earbuds in, lost in his own world. His worn backpack rested on his lap, and his mind buzzed with worries about school, part-time work, and helping his mom make rent this month. Life hadn't been easy, but Malik kept pushing forward, even when the odds felt stacked against him. At the next stop, the bus jolted to a halt. The doors hissed open, and a very pregnant white woman stepped carefully aboard, one hand pressed protectively to her belly. Her face looked tired, flushed from the late heat of the day. She glanced around, searching for a seat, but the bus was packed, every row filled with commuters eager to get home. Some avoided her eyes. Others simply pretended not to notice. Without thinking twice, Malik stood up and offered his seat. He didn't do it for praise or recognition, it just felt like the right thing to do. The woman gave him a grateful, almost relieved smile as she lowered herself carefully onto the seat he'd given up. Malik just nodded, shrugged off the attention, and grabbed a pole to steady himself for the ride ahead. What Malik didn't know was that this small, quiet act of kindness was about to change his life in ways he could never have imagined. A few blocks later, at a downtown intersection, the bus slowed. Outside on the street, a scene was unfolding, flashing blue and red lights, a growing crowd, shouts piercing the thick evening air. People craned their necks to see what was happening. Malik's curiosity got the better of him, and he leaned slightly toward the window. On the sidewalk, a heavily pregnant black woman stood with her hands raised, her face calm but firm. Across from her, a police officer barked orders, his hand twitching near his holster. He was young, tense, and clearly didn't recognize the woman standing before him. Passers-by had already begun filming on their phones, murmuring in disbelief. Some shouted for the officer to back off. What no one seemed to know yet, not the officer, not even the crowd, was that the woman wasn't just any citizen. She was the newly elected mayor of Brookdale, one of the most respected figures in the entire city. And she wasn't about to back down. The bus driver, noticing the tension outside, pulled the vehicle over and opened the doors. Some passengers started to exit, hoping to catch a closer look. Malik stayed where he was, heart pounding, a strange feeling stirring in his chest. Something told him this moment was bigger than just a simple misunderstanding. Meanwhile, the pregnant white woman, still seated, fished around in her bag. Malik was too distracted to notice at first, but then she tapped him lightly on the arm. When he turned, she pressed a folded note into his hand. Her eyes were warm but serious. "Read it later," she whispered, almost as if she knew something he didn't. Confused but respectful, Malik tucked the note into his pocket. His attention snapped back to the scene outside. The mayor was speaking now, her voice steady but forceful, trying to defuse the situation without escalating it. The officers seemed to hesitate, but the tension was still thick, still dangerous. Inside the bus, Malik gripped the pole tighter, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him. Somehow, he knew, deep in his bones, that what was happening out there, and whatever was written in the note burning a hole in his pocket, were connected. And life, as he knew it, was about to change forever. Before he could process it, the officer made a sudden move, and everything around Malik exploded into chaos. The officer's sudden movement made the entire crowd gasp. Malik felt his heart leap into his throat. He pressed against the cool glass of the bus window, watching helplessly as the police officer grabbed the mayor's arm, trying to force her to turn around. She stumbled a little, one hand going instinctively to her belly, but she didn't fight back. Her voice was firm, steady, even as the situation spiraled. "I am the mayor of the city," she said again, loud enough that Malik heard her even from inside the bus. "You're making a mistake." But the officer wasn't listening. His face was tight with nerves, maybe fear, maybe something else, and the crowd around them was growing louder, shouting at him to stop. Some people held up their phones higher, capturing every second. Others yelled out her name now, realizing who she was. Malik clutched the folded note in his pocket like it was a lifeline. He had no idea what it said, why the woman on the bus had given it to him, but something about it felt important now. He shifted from foot to foot, torn between rushing out to help and knowing there wasn't much he could do. Behind him, the pregnant woman who gave him the note sat with a strange calmness on her face. She wasn't watching the chaos unfold outside. She just sat there, her hands gently folded over her stomach, as if she already knew how everything would play out. The bus driver, clearly uncomfortable, stepped outside to see what was happening, leaving the doors wide open. Passengers murmured among themselves, some stepping down to the sidewalk, others staying seated, unsure whether they were safer inside or out. Malik couldn't stand it any longer. He moved toward the open door, his sneakers sticking slightly to the worn bus floor as he went. He stood just at the threshold, watching, heart hammering. The mayor locked eyes with the officer. Her voice dropped lower, almost like she was speaking to a scared animal. "Officer," she said, "you need to step back.
Listen to me.
You are making a mistake you can't undo." But instead of stepping back, he reached for his radio. The moment was fragile, like a thread stretched too tight, ready to snap. Malik could feel it in the air. So could the crowd. The shouting grew louder, people pleading for the officer to stop, to think. A second police cruiser pulled up, tires screeching. Two more officers jumped out. One of them immediately recognized the mayor and grabbed the young officer's arm, pulling him back roughly. "What the hell are you doing?" he barked. The younger officer looked stunned, like he was just now realizing how badly he had misjudged the situation. The mayor straightened, brushing herself off carefully, pride and hurt battling across her face. For a long moment, nobody moved. The city seemed to hold its breath. Malik stood frozen at the top of the bus steps, not sure whether to move forward or stay where he was. His fingers brushed the note again in his pocket, a reminder that there was still something he didn't understand yet. The pregnant woman behind him spoke softly, barely above a whisper. "You should read it now." Malik turned to look at her. Her eyes were kind, but there was a heaviness there too, like she carried some deep sorrow. She nodded once, encouraging him. He pulled the note from his pocket and unfolded it with shaking hands. The handwriting was neat but urgent, the words simple and direct. "Your kindness today will be repaid. But first you must be brave. Follow the mayor. She needs you more than you know." Malik read the words twice, his mind racing. What did it mean? How could he possibly help the mayor, a woman powerful enough to run the city? He was just a kid. A poor kid from the east side, who barely scraped by. But something inside him stirred, a feeling he couldn't ignore. Outside, the mayor was speaking again, calmer now that the situation was under control. She thanked the senior officer who had intervened, but her face was still tight with anger and pain. She glanced once toward the bus, her eyes scanning the faces, looking for something or someone. When her gaze landed on Malik, she paused. Just for a second. And in that moment, it felt like an invisible thread connected them. Malik felt it deep in his chest. Without even thinking, he stepped off the bus and onto the sidewalk. The crowd parted slightly, whispering as he moved closer. He didn't know what he was going to say, what he was supposed to do. He just knew he had to be there. The mayor gave him a small nod, almost imperceptible, as if she understood. The senior officer barked orders at the younger one, forcing him to step back, lowering the tension. The flashing lights from the cruisers painted the street in harsh colors, and the sound of radios crackling filled the heavy air. Malik reached the mayor, standing just a few feet away. She turned toward him fully now, looking down at him not with suspicion, but with something softer, trust, maybe even hope. Before she could speak, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb. The driver, a woman in a dark suit, jumped out and rushed to the mayor's side. "Madam Mayor," she said urgently, "we need to get you out of here.
Now."
The mayor hesitated. She looked back at Malik, her eyes searching his face like she was trying to memorize it. "I want him to come," she said quietly to the driver. The woman blinked, surprised. "Him?" "Yes," the mayor said. "Trust me." The driver nodded briskly, then motioned for Malik to get in the back seat. Malik looked back at the bus, at the crowd, at the pregnant woman who was now watching him with a faint, mysterious smile. He climbed into the SUV without another word. As the vehicle sped away from the scene, Malik clutched the note tighter in his hand, feeling the weight of it all. He had no idea where they were going or why he had been chosen. But deep down, he knew that his life, and maybe even the city itself, would never be the same again. Beside him, the mayor finally spoke, her voice low and full of something heavy. "There's a reason you were there tonight, Malik," she said. "And there's a reason I need your help." The city lights blurred past the window, and somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Malik swallowed hard, not knowing what was coming next but certain of one thing. Whatever it was only just beginning. The SUV moved fast through the city streets, weaving between cars, the driver speaking quickly into a headset. Malik sat stiffly in the back seat next to the mayor, feeling the hum of the engine beneath him, the city lights flashing past like stars falling from the sky. The mayor stared out the window for a long time, her hand resting gently on her belly. She hadn't said another word since they pulled away from the bus stop. Malik's mind was racing, trying to piece everything together. The police officer, the attack, the crowd, the note. None of it made sense yet, but it all felt connected somehow, tangled up in something bigger than anything he'd ever been part of before. Finally, the mayor turned to him. Her eyes were tired but strong, a quiet storm behind them. "My name is Vanessa Carter," she said. "I know you probably have a lot of questions. I wish I could explain everything now, but it's not safe." "Not yet." Malik just nodded. His throat was too dry to speak. Vanessa leaned closer, lowering her voice. "What happened back there wasn't an accident. It wasn't some random mistake. There are people who don't want me in office, Malik. People who will do anything to get me out. Today was a warning, and it's only going to get worse." Malik felt a chill run through him. He thought about the officer's face, the way he looked nervous, confused, almost scared. Maybe he wasn't acting alone. Maybe someone had sent him. The idea made Malik's stomach twist. He opened his mouth, trying to find the right words, but before he could speak, the SUV turned sharply and pulled into a dimly lit underground garage. The heavy metal door clanged shut behind them. The driver got out first, checking the area carefully before opening their door. "This way," she said. Malik followed Vanessa through a side door into a concrete hallway. It smelled like oil and dust. Their footsteps echoed around them. At the end of the hall was a small room. No windows, just a table, a few chairs, and a buzzing fluorescent light. Inside the room were two other people, a tall man in a suit with a hard look in his eyes and a young woman typing quickly on a laptop. They both stood when the mayor entered. "This is Thomas," Vanessa said, nodding toward the man. "And Ava." She gestured to the woman. "They're part of my team. People I trust." Thomas gave Malik a quick nod, sizing him up. Ava offered a small, distracted smile, but kept typing. Vanessa sat down heavily in one of the chairs, waving Malik to sit too. "I need to explain why you're here," she said. "But first, you have to understand what's really going on in Brookdale." Malik leaned in, listening closely. "Brookdale looks peaceful on the surface," she said, her voice steady. "But underneath, there's corruption. Deep corruption. The police, city officials, even some of the businesses, they're all tied together in a network of favors, money, and fear. I ran for mayor to break that cycle, to clean it up, to give this city a real future." She paused, letting the words sink in. "But the people who've been benefiting from the way things are, they don't want change. They're powerful, and they're angry. Today, that officer was sent to scare me, to remind me that I'm not safe." Malik felt anger bubbling up inside him. He thought about his mom working 2 jobs just to keep food on the table, about his friends getting stopped and questioned for no reason, just because of the color of their skin. He thought about all the promises politicians had made over the years and broken. Maybe, just maybe, Vanessa Carter was different. But why me? Malik finally asked, his voice cracking a little. "Why did she give me that note? Why do you need me?" Vanessa smiled softly, a little sad. Because sometimes change doesn't come from the top down. It comes from the people the system forgot about, she said. I didn't plan for you to be there tonight. But when I saw you stand up, when you offered your seat to a stranger without thinking twice, I knew. You're the kind of person this city needs.
Brave. Kind.
Unbought. Thomas crossed his arms, speaking for the first time. His voice was deep, serious. We can't trust just anyone, Malik, he said. We need eyes and ears out there. People who can move quietly, unnoticed. People who the enemy won't suspect. Malik's head spun. He was just a teenager, not a hero. He didn't know anything about politics or corruption. But at the same time, he felt something inside him click into place. Maybe this was why he'd been pulled into all this. Maybe this was his chance to make a real difference. Before he could answer, a loud knock echoed through the hallway outside. Sharp. Demanding. Everyone froze. Thomas moved first, pulling a small gun from under his jacket and motioning for Malik and Vanessa to stay behind him. Ava snapped her laptop shut and shoved it into a bag. The knock came again. Then a deep voice, muffled by the door. Police. Open up. Vanessa's face tightened. She turned to Malik quickly. There's a back exit through the garage, she whispered. Ava will take you. Malik's heart pounded so loudly he could barely hear. But he started to say, No time, Thomas barked. Go. Ava grabbed Malik's arm and yanked him toward a hidden door at the back of the room. It swung open into another narrow hallway. They sprinted down it, Ava pulling him faster than he thought he could run. His sneakers squeaked against the cold floor. Behind them, he heard the crash of the main door breaking open, shouts, the thud of heavy boots pounding into the room they had just left. They burst back into the garage. The driver was already waiting, engine running. Malik and Ava dove into the car, and they peeled out just as a group of uniformed officers spilled out of the stairwell, waving guns and shouting. The car sped into the night, tires screeching. Malik leaned back in the seat, gasping for breath. His mind was on fire with fear and adrenaline. What's happening? He asked. Ava's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. They found us faster than we thought, she said grimly. There's a leak. Someone on the inside. Malik stared out the window as the city rushed by in a blur. He realized now that nothing was safe. No one could be trusted easily. Not in Brookdale. And whatever he had gotten himself into, he was in it deep now, and there was no going back. The folded note in his pocket felt heavier than ever, like a promise he hadn't yet fulfilled. The night stretched out before him, full of danger, full of questions. And somewhere out there, hidden in the shadows, the people who wanted to destroy Vanessa Carter were already planning their next move. The car raced through the sleeping city, dodging down alleys and weaving through back streets. Malik's heart hadn't stopped pounding since they fled the garage. Beside him, Ava kept glancing in the rearview mirror, her face tight with focus. They didn't speak much. Every second felt too heavy, too sharp, like any wrong word could shatter whatever thin safety they had left. After what felt like forever, they pulled into an old parking lot behind a half-shuttered strip mall. The lot was cracked and overgrown with weeds. A broken neon sign flickered weakly above an abandoned laundromat. Ava killed the engine and sat there for a long moment, gripping the wheel like it was the only thing anchoring her to the world. We have to wait, she said finally, until Thomas or Vanessa sends word. Malik nodded, but he couldn't sit still. He got out of the car, breathing in the cold night air, trying to calm the storm inside him. Everything had changed so fast. Just a few hours ago, he was another face on a crowded bus, just another black teenager trying to stay out of trouble. Now he was wrapped up in something dangerous and bigger than he could have imagined. He paced the cracked concrete, thinking about Vanessa's words, about corruption hiding beneath the city's pretty lights. He thought about the officer who grabbed her, about the pregnant woman on the bus who handed him the note like she knew exactly what would happen. It was too much coincidence. Too carefully planned. Then a new thought hit him, one that made his stomach clench. What if the note wasn't a warning? What if it was a setup? He turned to Ava, about to voice his fear, when the first shot rang out. The bullet smashed through the car's back window, sending shards of glass flying. Ava dove down, grabbing Malik and pulling him behind the car with her. His ears rang from the crack of the gun. His whole body went numb with shock. "Stay down," Ava hissed. Another shot rang out, this one hitting the front windshield with a violent crack. Malik's hands scraped against the rough pavement as he crawled for cover behind a rusted dumpster. He peeked out just enough to catch a glimpse of a shadow moving between two buildings. "They found us," he gasped. Ava cursed under her breath, pulling a small pistol from her jacket. She moved fast, her eyes scanning the darkness, searching for the shooter.
How?
Malik whispered. "I don't know," she said. "We were careful." Malik's mind raced. Someone had tracked them here. Someone who knew exactly where they'd run after the attack at the garage. That meant the leak inside Vanessa's team wasn't just real. It was worse than any of them had realized. The shot stopped for a moment, the silence hanging heavy, broken only by Malik's ragged breathing. Ava made a decision. "We have to move.
Now."
If we stay, we're sitting ducks." Before Malik could argue, she grabbed his hand and sprinted across the lot, keeping low. Another shot whizzed past them, hitting the side of the laundromat with a dull thud. They burst through a side door, hanging crooked on its hinges, and plunged into the darkness inside. The air inside the laundromat was thick with dust and the sour smell of mildew. Old washers and dryers stood like rusting sentinels, their doors hanging open. Malik could barely see, but he stumbled after Ava, trusting her instincts. They ducked behind a row of machines. Ava pulled out a battered cell phone and sent a quick message. "They're too close," she muttered. "We can't wait for backup. We have to get to the safe house." Malik nodded, trying to stay calm. But just as they started to move again, he froze. Standing at the other end of the laundromat, partially hidden in shadow, was a figure. A man. And even in the dim light, Malik could see something terrifying. He was wearing a police uniform. But it wasn't the same officer from earlier. This one was older, meaner. His badge glinted under the broken lights, but there was something wrong about it, something Malik couldn't quite place. The man smiled, a cold, empty smile. "You're making this harder than it has to be," the officer said, his voice low and almost friendly. "Come with me now, and I'll make sure you walk out of here." Ava stepped in front of Malik, her gun raised, steady. "Not a chance," she said. The officer chuckled. "You think you can protect him? You think you can protect her?" He shook his head slowly. "You have no idea how deep this goes. You're fighting a war that's already been lost." Malik's blood ran cold. How did this man know who he was? How did he know about Vanessa? Ava edged toward the back door, keeping her weapon trained on the officer. "We need to move," she whispered to Malik. The officer's smile widened. "She's not who you think she is, you know," he said, louder now, his voice echoing in the abandoned building. "Vanessa Carter isn't some hero. She's just another player. She's made deals too. Deals she doesn't want you to know about." Malik hesitated. Doubt twisted in his gut. He didn't want to believe it, but the man's words burrowed deep, planting seeds of fear. Ava grabbed his arm. "Don't listen to him. It's a trap." They bolted toward the back door as the officer raised his gun. A shot rang out, hitting the dryer next to Malik's head with a deafening bang. Metal shrieked, and sparks flew. They slammed through the back door into another alley, running flat out into the night. Malik's legs burned. His lungs screamed for air. But he didn't stop. They didn't dare stop. Behind them, the officer didn't chase, but his voice carried through the darkness, chilling and sure. "You can't run forever. We'll find you. We always do." They turned corner after corner, losing themselves in the maze of back streets. Finally, Ava led Malik into the shadow of a crumbling building and crouched low, listening. For now, they seemed safe. But Malik's mind wasn't. The second plot twist had hit him like a freight train. Maybe the battle wasn't just Vanessa versus the corrupt system. Maybe there were secrets on both sides. And he was stuck right in the middle. The sky above them was starting to lighten just a little, the first hints of dawn breaking over Brookdale. But the light brought no comfort. Only more danger. And more questions. The city wasn't just broken. It was full of lies. And somehow, Malik knew the worst was still ahead. The morning air felt heavy as Malik and Ava crouched in the shadows, trying to catch their breath. Somewhere behind them, Brookdale was waking up. The rumble of garbage trucks, the bark of distant dogs, the early shuffle of tired workers starting their day. But here, hidden in the alleys, it still felt like the night hadn't ended. Malik's hands were scraped and bleeding. His muscles ached. His mind spun in circles, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Ava checked her phone again. A message flashed across the cracked screen. It was a single word. Go. They made it, she said, relief softening her voice just a little. Vanessa and Thomas are safe. We're meeting them at the safe house. Without wasting another second, they moved. Malik followed Ava through winding alleys and narrow streets until they reached an old church on the edge of the city. The building was half falling apart, its stained glass windows shattered, its steps crumbling. It didn't look like much, but that was the point. They slipped through a side door and into a hidden basement below. Vanessa and Thomas were already there, along with a few other trusted faces Malik didn't recognize. Everyone looked exhausted, but there was a fire in their eyes, a stubborn refusal to give up. Vanessa pulled Malik into a hug, surprising him. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that," she whispered. "But you did good, Malik. You made it." Thomas closed the door and slid a heavy bolt across it. "We don't have much time," he said. "They'll figure out we're here eventually." Everyone gathered around an old wooden table. Vanessa pulled out a map of the city and laid it flat, weighing down the corners with whatever she could find. Malik stood close, heart pounding. "This is our chance to expose them," Vanessa said. "We have evidence. Videos, documents, testimony from people inside the system who finally decided to talk. If we release it all at once, they can't stop it. The public will know the truth. About the police, the politicians, the money laundering, everything." Thomas tapped a spot on the map, City Hall. "We have to get inside," he said. "There's a secure server there. If we upload everything straight from the mayor's office, it'll hit every major network at the same time. They won't be able to spin it or cover it up." Malik swallowed hard. Breaking into City Hall? In broad daylight? It sounded crazy. It sounded impossible. But as he looked around the room, he realized no one here was backing down. They had come too far to stop now. Hours later, as the city buzzed with its normal routine, Malik found himself slipping through a side door at City Hall with Ava and Thomas. Vanessa had stayed behind to coordinate. Malik's heart was a hammer in his chest. Every hallway they crept through, every corner they turned, felt like walking a tightrope over fire. They reached the mayor's office without being seen. The real mayor's office. Vanessa's office. Thomas worked fast at the computer, plugging in a flash drive, tapping keys. "It's working," he muttered. Malik kept lookout by the door, every nerve on edge. Just as Thomas started the upload, a loud voice barked from down the hall. "Hey, what are you doing there?" It was security, Real security this time, and a lot of them. "Buy me a minute," Thomas snapped. Ava pulled Malik back behind a tall filing cabinet, drawing her gun but not firing. They didn't want to start a shootout. They just needed to stall. Malik's mind raced. He spotted a fire alarm on the wall and, without thinking too much, he sprinted for it and yanked it hard. The alarm screamed through the building. Sprinklers burst open above them, soaking everything. Chaos exploded. In the confusion, most of the security guards turned to evacuate the building, following emergency protocols. Thomas grinned. "Good thinking, kid." The upload bar on the computer crept closer to completion. 50%. 60. Then, just when it seemed like they were going to make it, the second twist hit. Vanessa's voice crackled through Thomas's earpiece. "Stop the upload," she ordered. "It's a trap." Thomas froze, his hands hovering over the keyboard. "They planted fake evidence on the server." Vanessa continued breathlessly. "It'll make it look like we're the corrupt ones. If you upload it now, we'll lose everything. They'll frame us instead." Malik's chest tightened. It made sense now. The too easy access, the way they found the safe house so quickly, the strange police officer's words. The real plan wasn't just to stop Vanessa. It was to discredit her, to paint her and everyone helping her as criminals. Thomas ripped the flash drive from the computer just as a few stubborn guards shoved through the stairwell door. Ava grabbed Malik's arm. "We're going out the window." They shoved open a side window, and Malik climbed out onto a narrow ledge high above the street. His hands were shaking. Cars and people buzzed far below. One wrong move, and he would fall. But he didn't fall. They inched along the ledge until they found a maintenance ladder. One by one, they slid down to the alley, hitting the ground hard but safe. They raced back to the church safe house as sirens screamed across the city. Inside, Vanessa looked up, soaking wet but alive, hope flickering in her tired eyes. "We still have the real evidence," Thomas panted, holding up the flash drive. "They didn't win." Vanessa nodded. "Then it's not over." They set up a private live stream from the basement, blasting the real truth across social media, news networks, and public forums all at once. Documents, videos, sworn testimony, everything the people needed to see. Within minutes, Brookdale was on fire with the news. Protests erupted across the city. Honest officers stood up and spoke out. Crooked politicians scrambled to explain themselves. For the first time in a long time, the people had power again. Malik watched the news roll in, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and hope. He had made a difference. But just as the sun began to set again, as the city roared with the sound of a new beginning, Malik's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It read simply, "You think this is over? We're just getting started." His stomach twisted. The real fight had only just begun. And this time, they knew exactly who he was. Malik stared at the message for a long time, the weight of it sinking into him. Even after everything they had been through, the danger, the betrayal, the narrow escape, the battle wasn't truly over. But something inside him had changed. He wasn't the same boy who had offered his seat on the bus a few days ago. He had seen too much now. He had felt the pulse of the city's broken heart, and he knew he couldn't just walk away from it. He slipped the phone back into his pocket and looked around the old church basement. Ava and Thomas were talking in low voices with Vanessa, planning their next move. The mood was tense but filled with a new kind of determination. They had exposed the corruption. They had woken up the people of Brookdale. That was a start. And sometimes, a start was enough to shift everything. Vanessa caught Malik's eye and smiled. A real, tired but proud smile. She walked over and sat beside him on the dusty floor, her back against the crumbling wall. "You did good, Malik," she said quietly. "You didn't just survive. You stood up." He shrugged, feeling awkward but proud too. I didn't want to be part of the problem."
"You're not," she said.
"You're part of the change." They sat there for a moment, the chaos outside buzzing in the distance. News helicopters flew overhead. Sirens howled. The city was alive, roaring for justice. But inside the old church, it felt almost peaceful. Malik thought about everything that had happened since he met the pregnant woman on the bus, how a simple act of kindness had pulled him into a fight much bigger than himself. He remembered the note she had given him, how he almost tossed it aside without reading it, how one moment of compassion had spiraled into a chain of events that changed his whole life. He pulled the note out of his pocket again, smoothing it with shaking hands. The words were still simple, still powerful. "Your kindness will take you farther than you can imagine. Never forget who you are." He smiled faintly, realizing she knew exactly what she was doing when she gave it to him. She hadn't just needed a seat. She needed someone who still believed that doing the right thing mattered. Someone willing to listen, to act. Ava called everyone together. It was time to move again. They couldn't stay in one place too long, not now that they had become targets. But before they left, Vanessa turned to Malik. "I want you to stay close to me," she said. "You've got instincts, Malik. And heart. That's rare." He nodded, feeling the weight of her words. They packed what little they had and slipped out into the night, leaving the church behind. Brookdale was on the edge of something new, not fixed yet, not safe, but cracking open. Truth had a way of doing that. Once it leaked into the world, it was almost impossible to shove back into the shadows. As they moved through the streets, Malik saw people gathering. Groups on corners, in parks, outside City Hall. Ordinary people, teachers, shop owners, bus drivers, students. Holding signs, chanting, demanding answers. Some faces were angry, some were hopeful. All were determined. The whole city felt different now, like it had finally woken up from a long, heavy sleep. Malik walked with the others, blending into the growing crowd. Somewhere deep in his chest, a small ember of hope burned brighter. The mayor, the real mayor, Vanessa, would have a long road ahead. There were still battles to fight, systems to rebuild, trust to earn. The corrupt officers and politicians wouldn't give up easily. There would be threats, setbacks, maybe even more betrayals. But now, the people knew the truth. They weren't blind anymore. Malik wasn't blind anymore either. As the sun rose over the skyline, washing the city in gold, Malik thought about everything he had learned. About power, fear, bravery. About how real change didn't happen in one big moment, but in thousands of small ones. A seat offered to a stranger, a note passed with quiet faith, a choice to stand up instead of step aside. He thought about the pregnant woman he met on the bus, the woman he now knew was Vanessa's sister. She had been risking everything to get that note into the right hands. Into his hands. Trusting that one act of kindness could spark something bigger.
And it had.
It always did. Malik smiled as he moved forward with the crowd, blending into the river of voices rising up into the morning air. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just a passenger watching the city roll past him. He was part of it. A real part of it. Brookdale still had a long way to go.
So, did he.
But together, they would get there. Step by step. Choice by choice. Kindness by kindness. Because sometimes the smallest moments lead to the biggest changes. And Malik was ready for whatever came next. He wasn't afraid anymore. He knew exactly who he was now. And no one could take that away. Not ever again.